Hello everyone, and welcome to a mini episode of How to Speedrun Anything. Mini episodes like this one are intended to be shorter, more to the point episodes, likely building off of things that I've already done. Today it's Chapter 9 of Celeste, Farewell. Everything covered in this tutorial assumes knowledge of Celeste's advanced movement techniques, so if you haven't seen my any % tutorial that covers that, it'll be in the top right corner. If you aren't comfortable with the movement tech in the regular chapters, I highly recommend practicing them, particularly the extended hyperdash and wave dash. Unlike the base game, this chapter does require them in some points for progression, so they're necessary to know. To access Farewell, you will need to have completed Chapter 8 on the save file. However, once it's unlocked, you can do a speedrun on the level anytime, so you won't need to make a new save each time. Finally, play the chapter casually first. You'll have at least some understanding of the new mechanics that it adds, so you won't be going in blind. As always, this guide will cover beginner strats to get you through the chapter quickly and efficiently, without a ton of risk or difficult tricks. As a whole, this chapter is very difficult, but the levels get much easier as you better understand timings and cycles. If you find faster strats or things that work better for you, use them. A majority of the strats covered will be what I personally use to get my current PB. This tutorial is here to get someone started with getting through Farewell without thousands of deaths and hours of gameplay. The chapter itself currently has 67 runs on speedrun.com. The world record is 15 minutes and 52.697 seconds by Demo Jameson, achieved on February 13th, 2020. The median time is roughly 21 minutes and 45 seconds, and a 17:36 is required for top 10. I've run this in the past, right around when the chapter was first released in September 2019. My first blind playthrough was 4 hours and 20 minutes. My current PB is 22 minutes flat in-game time. While this was an okay run, my goal time is just a PB. If you're new to the series or like what I'm doing, feel free to like, subscribe, share, or whatever else you can do to support. As I make more main episodes, if there's a category or level you'd like to see in a mini episode, let me know. These types of episodes are easier to make and will be a lot faster to come out due to me not needing to learn a new game. That being said, a new main episode should be coming out within the next month. Check out the How to Speedrun Anything playlist for the rest of my videos, and let's get on with the tutorial. This run will effectively be a spliced commentated run, showcasing various strats that I use with some tips and some skips that can be of benefit. I'll also talk about a few alternate strats or routes that you can take if either you want to be faster or more safe, depending on the room. This format is the easiest to get the information out, as opposed to cutting out some rooms that might be giving you a challenge, as pretty much every room in this chapter is difficult. Because of this, you might be hearing "follow my movement" a lot. The first of the 9 subchapters is called Singular. Starting out on the summit, hyperdash right, skip the cutscene, and move on to the clouds. If you jump off the bottom cloud and get the maximum height from it, you can get to the upper right cloud with one dash, then jump into the purple orb. There are 2 cutscenes following this. From this point on, you will only have one dash, much like everything in the base game before the end of Chapter 6. This subchapter first introduces the double dash crystal. It's like a normal dash crystal, but it gives you 2 dashes. In this room, it's possible to skip the first double dash crystal by doing an extended hyperdash, then dashing late into the second regular crystal to cross the gap. Bring momentum into the next room, as you can skip the intended solution by just grabbing the double dash, jumping off the platform, then dashing to the end. A regular dash at the end of the previous room is more than enough. Many of the next rooms can be done faster by bringing some sort of momentum in, as you'll be able to pass the first obstacle or spring most of the time. The next mechanic to be introduced is the pufferfish. The first one in this room can be skipped with momentum, then jump on the top half, dash into it to explode it, and finish the room. After jumping off the first pufferfish in this room, hold the jump button to get extra height, then dash right onto the next one. The next levels are straightforward and don't have anything special for them, just follow my movement. You can bring momentum into a couple of these rooms to make them faster. The next subchapter is Power Source. After getting to the top, you can either take the top or bottom path. The bottom path is easier and more suited for beginners, so we'll be using that for the sake of this tutorial. I personally don't use the top path, though it does seem to be quicker with proper movement. Wave dash or extended hyper past the jellyfish and down the hole, and continue through the rooms. In this room, you'll need to take the jellyfish into the next room. This will be done by what is known as a jellyvator. To do it, you must let go of the jellyfish while holding down, then dash straight up into it. This will give you lots of vertical momentum and will be used in the next section. In this section, you'll be skipping all of the 5 keys to get through. With the jellyfish you took from the previous room, get towards the top of the room. Then, jellyvator up through the hole on the left to get to the power box. Break the power box, grab the jellyfish, and move down towards the right. Get the double dash crystal, and, without dashing, use the springs to move up left. The platforms on where you'll be going bob up and down a bit, so when they're near the top, jump off to the right and up the secret corridor. Make sure you still have both dashes. From here, stand a little past the middle of the indent in the floor past the red bubble. Then, throw the jellyfish to the right, go into the bubble, hold grab, use your first dash into the jellyfish to go straight up, then jellyvator into the top. This sounds fairly complex, and it is, but once you get the timing down it gets much easier. If you miss the skip, go down the hole you came from, then down and a bit left to get a backup jellyfish. Grab the double dash crystal and repeat. If you do not want to do this skip, you can do this area as intended by getting all 5 keys, but this skip saves around 2 to 3 minutes. A more in-depth tutorial on this skip by Dave Stereo is in the description. Once you perform the skip, move down right and through the next section, finishing the subchapter. The third subchapter is Remembered. There's really nothing special about this subchapter, most of the fast strats are what's intended. There may be a few places where you can carry momentum in between rooms, but there's mostly just some jellyfish movement. Often, you can dash into a jellyfish before grabbing it. This will give you a good boost of speed, similar to how momentum works while grabbing the Theo Crystal, just this time you float. Enjoy the music, get to the end, and skip the cutscene after the fake crystal heart. The fourth subchapter is Event Horizon. This is, in my opinion, the most difficult subchapter execution-wise. It contains multiple very difficult segments, and my best advice is to just practice a bunch so you can best understand the timings that are necessary. This is also the first subchapter to implement wave dashing into its level design, so from here on out it is required, though sometimes you can substitute an extended hyper instead, based on the obstacle. To skip the Crystal Heart Gate, dash jump starting from the left of the platform, then hyperdash off of the next thing you land on. If you opt to not skip it, dash a bunch into the ground while the crystal hearts are filling up to save some in-game time. Past that, just move through the rooms. These are more or less easy as they're an introduction to wave dashing. Carry momentum out of the last room with a screen, dash jump, then jump into the bird, then skip the cutscene. The next few rooms use a wave dash to get to or past the first obstacle. A few of these can be skipped by just taking hyperdash momentum through the previous room, then jumping to maintain the momentum. If you miss it, just wave dash as intended. At the end of this room, you can double dash into the conveyor belt, then jump around the spikes, or double wall bounce off of the 1x1 blocks, then jump onto the last segment of the conveyor belt. The objective of the next room is to not touch the top of the Kevin block as much as possible. An easy way to do this is as follows. Dash into the bottom of the right side. After the spike cluster, jump up on the Kevin block, then out onto the wall. Grab the double dash crystal and grab the bottom of the left side of the Kevin block. Dash up and over to get the key and land on the block. Jump off of the block and dash into the bottom of the right side again. Wait until the end, jump on the right wall, jump on the Kevin block, and up to the end. In this room, if you grab the moving block low enough, you'll go right under the spikes. Ride it to the end of the room and dash to the end without getting any keys. Take momentum into the next room to skip the first wave dash. In this room, if you jump off the second moving block fast enough, you can gain enough height to grab the last block without having to dash to it, though this is tricky. In this room, try and follow my movement. This route works best for me, but if you're having trouble with it, try something else. It's fairly difficult to perform and timings and cycles are somewhat tight. This next room is often called the hardest room in the chapter. It's very difficult and very well might be the hardest, but it all comes down to timing. I usually do the first jump when the moving block begins to touch the second gap in the spikes. I go onto the spring for the second jump when the moving block begins to touch the first spike. Wall bounce on the block both times and clear the room. It's possible to skip the feather here, but the strat is fairly risky and difficult, so just grab the double dash crystal, go into the feather, and wave dash off the block. Fall all the way down, dash into the spring, and use the feathers all the way to the top. The next subchapter is Determination. If you carried momentum into the first room, you can dash right to the feather. If not, wave dash over. You can dash into the ground after the wall bounce to reset the block's position and safely get to the next dash crystal here. You can skip a few of these bubbles if you want, but it's safest and easiest to just do the intended path. Dash into the next room to skip the wave dash. The next room relies heavily on stamina conservation, so try not to jump or climb unnecessarily. Follow my movement here and you should be fine. If you really want to show off in this room, you can go through the demo dash room on this drop. It's much less safe than the regular fall, so I advise against it. I often rely on the cycle after death for a more reliable route, even retrying as soon as I start the room to get on the cycle I'm most comfortable with. After this room, you can carry hypermomentum off the moving block into the next room, gaining a ton of speed. If you jump or dash properly in the next room, you can avoid dying and get through the beginning a little faster. The ice ball room is another fairly difficult one with multiple routes that you can take. I'll show the one that I use here, but remember to just be patient and hold jump to gain additional height when necessary. At the end of this room, you can opt to go through the room transition to the upper right if you don't feel confident that you'll be able to dash through the spikes in the first try. If you miss that dash without using the room checkpoint, you'll have to go through all of the ice wall bounces again. The final room in this subchapter is another one that I'm more comfortable with the death cycle on. The feather movement is tricky to do properly as some of the cycles don't line up, so just try your best to avoid dying as much as possible and get to the end. You'll need to dash to the last feather and to the orb because of the wind, so don't forget this. You can also die after touching the orb if the stars are in the way. Skip the cutscene to begin the next subchapter, Stubbornness. This is a deceptively difficult subchapter. Though short, it is extremely timing and cycle dependent. However, there isn't really too much special about it to cover. Just turn up your audio, because the cycles are sound-based, but it is possible, albeit difficult, to do without audio. Just remember the speeds of the cycles, as they do change room to room. You can skip a good amount of the first room's blocks by wave dashing off of the earlier green block and getting to the end. In this room with the springs, if you're a little too fast on the cycle and go into a block that should be solid, you can dash out of it onto the spring. You'll often get the spring boost coming out of the block, though sometimes it doesn't work. The end of the next room is much easier if you can keep a dash, but it is possible without. Carry momentum or start the next room as soon as possible to avoid being blocked by the first blue blocks. Jumping right as a block disappears is a good way to stall midair, and makes this room and the previous one a lot easier. The route I used in the bubble room works best for me based on the cycles, though there are many routes that you can take through the keys. In the next room, you'll want to stall just a little bit before going onto the blue spring, so the purple block can appear so you can wall bounce off of it. The 8th subchapter is Reconciliation. It starts at an odd time as the subchapter begins using the previous one's mechanic. Get through the blue and purple blocks, grab the bird, and skip the cutscene. This subchapter is very fast-paced, often switching between the bird, the purple orb, feathers, and wind. It's not very easy to take these patiently, but just practice and the cycles and timings will make sense. This chapter uses most of the other mechanics already introduced, starting with the power box. Like in Power Source, these take 2 dashes to fully break, and you'll need to replenish your dash in different ways for most, so just be wary of what's around them. There are a few spots where you can skip the bird or orb that save time, including dashing from the bird to the spring in this room. The next few rooms are fast-paced flinging between a bunch of different mechanics, so just throw things where they need to go and be thrown where you need to go. This room's power box must be broken with the dash you get from the bird, then the one you get from the orb. I recommend wave dashing or extended hyper dashing into this jellyfish, then dashing towards the bird at the end. It's very difficult to clear this room without a dash at the barrier. Waiting for a cycle here is encouraged, as it's much easier to clear. Make sure you go into the purple orb at the end as the lightning block above it is leaving, as you can easily get thrown to your death. You can always stall in the air with a dash if you need to. It's possible to skip one of the pufferfish in this room if you get enough momentum. Just dash up into the top pufferfish's right side, then go over the blocks. Make sure you jump after the dream blocks, then dash after the bird or orb to avoid death. Follow my movement for the next few rooms. Most of these rooms just use intended strats, though there are, like always, small ways to speed each up. If you're having trouble in this room, you can use the fact that blocks won't start moving if you're only touching them for a small number of frames. You can use this to regain a dash on blocks that should normally be falling. Don't forget to wave dash after the bird. Jump into the feather and hold right. You can hyper off of these blocks, but the wind makes it much more difficult to control and is fairly unsafe, though faster. Remember to hold jump after the third pufferfish to keep both dashes into the bird. After grabbing the orb, skip the power block, get the double dash crystal next to the pufferfish, explode the pufferfish to the left, then break the block. The penultimate level might be one of the easiest. Hit the Kevin block, quickly grab the bird, wave dash to the end, crouch on the moving block, then break the power block. Skip the cutscene at the beginning of the 9th and final subchapter, Farewell. The subchapter is just one room, but it's long. It's longer than all of chapter 1 in the main game, and takes more than 1:40 to complete for even the fastest runners. There are also no checkpoints, so it needs to be completed in one go. However, the only real challenge is the first half. Most of the second half is fast-paced and intended for you to lose your nerves and fail, but it isn't that difficult in comparison to the first. Move through the jellyfish section, dashing and throwing when necessary. You don't need the dash crystal at this part, though it may be helpful to get a little bit higher on the screen for the updraft section. In the updraft section, remember to hold up to fly up faster and weave through the obstacles. Up at the top, let go of the jellyfish a bit before you bump your head on the lightning. This will activate the key and you can drop down. You don't need a dash for this, just drop down and pick up the crystal. Bounce off the pufferfish, explode it to the right, and grab the feather. Grab the block so it falls, and maneuver through the springs. As mentioned earlier, this section is just meant for you to lose your nerves. It's not supremely difficult to pull off. Just be good about your timings on grabbing the jellyfish and dashing, and you'll be good to finish. Break the power block, dash to the bird, and go all the way up with the feather. You will need to dash from the feather to the final orb at the end. It's very possible to die here at the last possible moment. Once you grab the orb, you're done. Chapter timing stops on the grab, so you can watch the cutscene or skip it, it won't affect your time. You completed chapter 9, by far the most difficult and longest chapter in the whole game. As mentioned a ton of times already, this chapter is hard. It'll likely take a long time to complete on your first playthrough, your first speedrun, and multiple more after. Just be patient, safe, and slow if you need to be when you can, and don't let mistakes get to you. It's easy to die over and over on a level and be frustrated, but just keep going until you get more consistent at it and clear it in one try. So, was I able to beat my PB? Currently, I beat my PB by 10 seconds. I'm working on saving time when I can, but it's still difficult. A lot of the sub-chapters are just inconsistent and difficult, but I'm getting my time saves where I need to, my sum of best is going down, and I'll definitely PB again soon. Overall, this run is fun. It's a great level to run if you're burning out on any percent or another category in the game, and it's a complete change of pace compared to those. While I wouldn't recommend as a main category to run, it's still good to test yourself and see how well you can perform. Looking at the length of this video, it's not really a mini episode. However, I wanted to give it this title as to not seem to be focusing on the same game for multiple episodes. This is meant to be supplementary to the original Any% video, and intended to be an extra challenge to those that have learned that run and wanted more. As mentioned earlier, if there are other categories that you want me to cover in this fashion from other games that I've covered, or if you have other comments regarding the structure of this video, let me know. Suggestions for main episodes are also always being taken. I'm always looking for games or categories around less than 45 minutes in length, something to make a manageable video on without it being hours long. So, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, follow other social medias, or do whatever else you want to support. I also have a Discord, linked in the description, if you want to get in touch with me easier. A main episode should be coming out within the month. Hopefully I'll actually start getting these up quicker. Check out the other videos in the series in the meantime, and I'll see you soon.